Have you ever wondered how the fuck the pros are going so fast? Well, today I'm going to talk a little bit about one part of the reason why they are going so fast, and that is going to be the forward and backwards leaning of your rider. I've seen some confusion on when to lean backwards, when to lean forwards, so in this video I will go through how to lean over bumps, how to lean in corners, how to lean up hills, how to use your lean to seat bounce and to scrub as well. So let's start by looking at one of the most common places where it is important that you have your right forward and backwards leaning. A part where many people are not really sure what to do. And that is going to be in roughness, like bumps, like braking bumps and stuff like that. And very short, we want to lean back, and I'm going to explain why right now. I definitely heard some people asking like, oh, how should I lean in the bumps coming into the corner? And some say like, if I lean forward, it feels like the bike is soaking the bumps up better, but that is actually not really true. It might feel like that. So this is what is going to happen if you're leaning forward over these bumps. You can see we get over the first bump, but you can see now we are going in between these two bumps, and we get a really nice kick in the back tire. It unsettles the bike. We now get the front tire in between these bumps again, and now our rear tire is above the ground. All the weight is on the front. Guess what's gonna happen? Well, the front end is fully compressed. It's gonna rebound, and since the rear tire didn't even touch the ground because it got kicked up, see, it's now going sideways. And we're not staying connected to the ground because the front tire bounced really high on this last bump instead of just bouncing a little bit. We're like barely even touching the ground right here, so we cannot turn right now. It's not until right now that we can start to turn, but we already missed the corner, because the thing we want to do, if you look at the rider, we want to lean back. And the reason why we want to lean back is because to get the front tire light. We want the front tire to go above the bumps. So basically by leaning back, we allow the front tire to stay above the bumps, and we are able to stay light on the bike, and thus making the bike feel more controlled. However, if you were to lean forward in these bumps, it might look very smooth, and the screen is probably not going to shake so much. If you however let the front tire be light, and you put a little bit of weight on the rear, if you just have a little bit of throttle, the rear suspension is going to soak everything up. There are however some cases where we actually could benefit for leaning forward in the bumps. Take this section for example. You can see I'm beginning leaning backwards as I explained earlier. Since the corner is kind of weird, we want the front tire to stay really connected to the ground, and I'm going to talk about that more later, but if we lean forward, we could put pressure on the front tire, making it push down into the ground and stick better into the rut. So you can see I'm starting to lean forward before the last bump, but since these bumps are so small, we can get away with this. If these bumps were as big as these over here, we probably wouldn't get away with leaning forward, because then our rear tire would just get kicked from the bumps, and the rear tire wouldn't be connected, and we mess up the corner. I would say I'm staying pretty central here, and I'm starting to lean more forward right over here, but you can start leaning a little bit forward even at the very end of the bumps, just to help to push the front tire down to the ground so that it sticks to the corner better. So this is how it looks with a controller cam in first person. So coming into the bumps, just lean back, slow down a little bit, leaning forward in the corner. We can start leaning forward over the bumps to get the front tire down into the corner. So let's look a little bit on hill physics, and the hill physics in this game is a little bit wonky with the Piboso stuff and all that, but basically what you want to do, when you're going up, you want to make sure that you keep traction with your front tire, because the moment we lose the traction with our front tire, the bike is gonna do the weird wobbly side to side thing, and you're definitely going to crash. So you can see I'm leaning forward to push the front end down to the ground to keep traction, but I'm not leaning fully forward because I want to lean backwards as much as possible without losing traction on the front, to get traction with the rear, to get speed and to drive up the hill. And then it's all about just fine adjustments. So you can see I'm still leaning forward. I don't know if you can see, but I'm sitting down as well, which could help with hill physics. So that's a really good tip. So let's look at it from the side. You can see I'm leaning forward and I'm going to sit down to keep the traction on the front tire but still get traction with the rear as well. And you can see I'm doing small adjustments all the time to not do a wheelie, but still get the most amount of traction on the rear. Okay, so let's move on to some corners. So when we are entering corners and it's a straight like this, we lean backwards just to get more traction to the rear tire, and that's just basically what we do on straightaways, that we lean back. And in such a wide corner, you can see we are leaning back when we are entering the corner, and we're leaning back until about right here. So at this point I'm starting to lean forward, and about at 50% I'm now fully leaned forward and I'm sitting, and then I keep leaning forward until exit, where I start to lean back again. And you have to be a little bit careful on the exit of the corner, especially on the 450s, because if you hit the throttle too hard and you lean back too fast or too early, you might do a wheelie out of the corner. Okay, so let's look at a little bit tighter corner. You can see when we are coming in on the straight, we are leaning back, and we're leaning back until we reach the corner itself. Here I start to lean forward a lot earlier because I need to turn a lot sharper. And basically what leaning forward does is that we put the weight on the front tire so that it compresses. You can see the suspension is compressed. When we compress the front, the bike becomes lower in the front. When the bike are lower in the front, it is easier to turn sharper. So basically by leaning forward and sitting down, we're pushing the front lower to help the bike turn better. Okay, let's also look a little bit on seat bouncing. So when we are seat bouncing, we are leaning as far backwards as we possibly can. And once our front wheel is about to leave the jump, you can see we start to lean forward. And the reason we do that is we want the bike to be as slow as possible in the back. We want to load and compress the back suspension. So when we start to lean forward here, the bike naturally decompresses, it rebounds and gives us just a little bit more oomph over the jump. So you can see here, leaning backward, compressing, leaning forward and letting the suspension rebound. Suspension basically helps us get more pop and lift over the jump. So let's look at scrubbing as well when we're at it. And you can see I'm leaning backwards here because it's a straight and there's some bumps. So it's natural that we lean backwards on straights and over bumps. As we move up the jump phase, I would say I'm about 50% up the jump phase. I'm starting to lean more forward and would say I'm about central here. And you can see the further up we come, the more we lean forward. When we are about to leave the ground with our front tire, we start to lean backwards and we basically soak up the jump. We let the bike come up to us, and that way we stay lower over the ground when we are jumping. So we're here at the 2025 ARL Maryland, or Mechanicsville. I just think it's a really good example of the kind of scrubbing thing. So you can see here coming over this bump, we basically just want to float them downside here. And you can see I'm starting to lean a little bit forward, and then I'm leaning backwards at the very end to soak up the jump and kind of float down. Here is another example where we use the same technique, where we basically jump from this bump and we land all the way and downside here. This also kind of showcases how we jump over braking bumps. This is a very big braking bump, and you can see I'm staying central on the bike. You can see it from the side here, and as I'm taking off, I'm leaning backwards and I'm sitting to let the bike come up to the rider itself and soak up the impact. And by soaking it up and letting the bike come up to the rider, most of all it feels a lot smoother and a lot slower, but we also stay lower. See, coming up, staying central, giving it a little gas and soaking it up. So let's take a really quick look at starts as well. This is going to differ between different bikes and different between 250 and 450, but I'll go through both 250 and 450, so just be patient. But what I do is I stay central, I don't touch my right stick forward and back at all. Once I take off, I lean slightly forward, and you can see I'm starting to lean back a little bit here, just a tiny bit. The goal is to start to lean back as soon as possible, but you can see I'm very smooth on pulling back. And that is because I don't want to wheelie. And the best way to prevent a wheelie of the start is to keep weight forward, and we do that by leaning forward. So it's really, you have to just get a good feeling for it. Lean as much backwards you can without doing a wheelie. And from this point, you just lean back. On a 450, however, you probably want to lean a little bit more forward, but they have a lot more power, and with a lot more power comes that it is easier to do a wheelie. So be more careful on a 450 and lean more forward on a 450. So let's do a quick recap. Lean backwards over the bumps to keep the front end light. to stay on top of the bumps. In corners we lean forward to get the weight on the front, to compress the suspension in the front, to get the lower, to be able to turn more and get better traction on the front tire, and doing a mini scrub, or what I would call it, where we stay central, and then as we are about to take off from a jump or a bump or whatever we want to jump, we lean slightly backwards. It's a really nice trick and it feels smooth, it feels flowy, and it feels controlled. If you have any questions, leave a comment or contact me through Discord, which is linked in the description. If you struggle with any of this, order a coaching session. It's $5 and we can look at what you specifically need to improve on, and you can ask your specific questions and you get instant response. I can look at your gameplay, etc. Otherwise, if you want more videos on how to become a pro or just generally get better than your buddies on the game, check out my channel. Stay subscribed because I will be posting a lot more videos. So until next time, have a great day.